Hello everyone and welcome to another Genshin Impact video. As you guys can see, today is going to be a little bit of a different video. I'm going to be talking about the 1.2 leaks that have started trickling out today, and hopefully you guys like it. As you can see, I have a bunch of tabs open at the top here, so we're going to go through a lot of stuff, and then I will be providing links for the Twitters and websites and stuff that I found all this on in the description below in case you guys want to check it out yourself. Give this video a like and feel free to subscribe if you're interested in more Genshin Impact content. Alright, here we go. The first thing I want to talk about is this map of Dragonspine, which, as some of you may have seen with a few other leaks floating around, there's already a version of this map floating around that has 3 blue torch icons on it. And I believe that that has to do with the body temperature mechanic, which is something that we're going to be encountering as this transitions more to a survival adventure type of game, more in the likes of Breath of the Wild, which some people compare this game to anyway. So we will probably still have that mechanic taking place. But as you can see here, there are a few telepoints scattered around, and also there's a domain in the center. And I'm really interested in what's in that domain. The rumor is, and I have a few pictures later on that talk about the cryo and hydro artifact sets and that taking place there. So we will talk about that in a little bit. But yeah, so far this is just the map and what the area will look like. As you can see, it's in between Mingyon Village and Dadaupa in Mondstadt. So I mean, everyone can see this on your map in game if you just look where the snowy mountain is and it says Dragonspine, to be honest. So the next thing we're going to go over is this picture, which is a picture of the Dendro cube. And I'm actually really interested in what this is going to be mechanically. And then also this being released is an indication that there will be Dendro characters coming soon. It didn't seem like on the Dragonspine map there was any space for a Dendro boss. Maybe this little arena could be where the Dendro boss is located, although it does seem a little weird to have a Dendro boss in an ice place. So maybe it could also take place in somewhere that already exists, like in one of the arenas in Mondstadt or something. But yeah, this is Dendro cube. It still costs 40 resin, all the things we expect from a cube. It drops the Dendro items, and then presumably it will drop the artifacts for Instructor and Gladiator as well. The next thing is, this is actually a picture of the drops from the artifact dungeon that is in Dragonspine. It's called Domain of Blessing Elegaic Rhyme. And this little image here is of the cryo set, and then this little image here is of the hydra set, which we will go over now. So starting off with the hydra set, the 2-piece set effect gives hydra damage bonus, and the 4-piece set effect, after using an elemental skill, increases normal and charge attack damage by 25% for 12 seconds. This set was literally perfectly designed for Child and any other water support DPS, with the exception of Mona. I mean, maybe if you're running DPS Mona and you do charge attacks with her, or you have C2 and you're proccing the charge attacks often, then this would also be good for that, honestly. But the main thing is that this is so broken for Child. As we already know, based on ample testing, both Rust and Stringless apply to Child's E, so the fact that normal attack damage buffs do apply to his melee stance means that this is going to be a perfect set for him, because it also converts his attacks to Hydro, which is being modified here as well. So yeah, perfect set for Child. It's called the Depth of Heart set, which is a pretty cool name actually. And I'm curious to see what the other icons for the set will look like. But this is the flower icon, and we'll see the other ones eventually. Next up, we have the Icebreaker artifact set, which gives the Blizzard Walker set bonus, which those names sound pretty cool also. But yeah, this is the cryo damage set. As you can see, the 2-piece is cryo bonus damage, just like every other elemental set. And then the 4-piece is increases damage against enemies that are frozen or affected by cryo by 30%. So this is actually super interesting, because typically with the Thunder Soother and Lava Walker sets, we have a separate set that has this set effect as the 4-piece and then has resistance as the 2-piece, but this set actually has cryo attack and then adds the additional damage on cryo or frozen enemies for this set effect, which is actually crazy, especially if you're thinking about Ayaka or Ganyu or some ice character that is going to be a DPS cryo character. This is debatably even good for child in a cryo comp, with the exception that you lose 15%, or that the 15% cryo damage bonus is not used for anything. But yeah, running this on a DPS cryo with also a cryo support, like Diona, for example, would be really crazy because the double cryo resonance also gives you 15% crit rate to enemies affected by frozen or cryo. So then you just have 30% extra damage and 15% crit rate, which is nuts. Moving on, we have one of the new weapons that's coming out. This is the Festering Fang. It's an energy recharge sword, which means innately it is a support sword, but it increases elemental skill damage by 16% and elemental skill crit rate by 4%. This is only at refinement 1. If I had to guess, I would assume this will scale up by 4% and then 1% per refine. It's possible that it would be 4% and 4%, but this is just speculation entirely. I have no idea what the refinements are. I'm not in beta myself. I don't know anyone who is, so I can't really ask. But yeah, just based on that assumption, it would end up being 32% and either 9, which seems like a weird number. So it'll probably end up being 20% crit rate. Yeah, well, anyway, we'll end up seeing what that looks like. But so far, this is the Festering Fang, and it is rumored to be Albedo's sword. Next, we have this picture, which is in Chinese. I personally do not read Chinese, but I have used a translation app and then also looked at a couple people's Twitters who do read Chinese to figure out what this is talking about. To my understanding, this is like a spiral abyss that, an event that is similar to Spiral Abyss, where it's like a boss rush type of event, and you get this sword as a reward from completing the event for free, as far as I'm aware. And then for each individual section, this is just here, this literally just says part 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then this little description here is a 14-hour lock. This is a 1-day lock, and then this is a 2-day lock. And I believe it's after completing the previous thing, which makes me feel like this event would go on for quite a while. As you can see in the top left here, this says 25 days, 14 hours. Presumably this would be taking place over the course of a month, and then we would do all the stuff in part 1, and then 14 hours later would unlock part 2, where we would do all the stuff, and then the day after that we'd get part 3, and so on and so forth. As far as I can tell, this event is called Bai Li and the Black Dragon, so we'll see what that means, and I know it has to do with Dragonspine in some way, but we'll have to see what that is when 1.2 comes out. Next is another weapon that actually that is not in the same line as the previous one, but seems to be focused more on DPS and less of a support or E spam sword. This seems more like a physical damage, normal damage, charge attack damage type of thing, because the spear itself has physical damage bonus, and then the additional effect on the spear is whenever you hit an enemy with normal and charge attacks, 60% of forming and dropping an Everfrost icicle above them, which deals 80% AoE damage and can only occur once every 10 seconds. Enemies affected by cryo are dealt 200% attack damage, and that can only occur once every 10 seconds. So just for reference, this scaling for the 200% is very similar to what Prototype Aminus is at Refine 1, which means that it's likely to be something closer to 400% whenever it is Refine 5. And that's going to be actually crazy to enemies affected by cryo. And even though we don't have many spear users at the moment, there's also a little bit of information floating around about a spear user that we are potentially going to get named Rosaria. So I found this website because a friend linked it to me to give me the information for Zhongli's Ascension mats and talent materials, but they actually have a few other characters that have been data mined or that have been leaked in recent history. So I'm going to reference a couple of things on this site as well. We don't actually have any character art or information about what this character looks like or what the skills are, but we do know that they're a cryo character, they are a pole arm or spear user, and that they take Val berries and insignias to upgrade them, along with obviously cryo registering materials. Additionally, their talents are the Books of Ballad, and then same deal with the insignias, and they use one of the child mats for their talent upgrades past level 6. So it'll be really interesting to see what these skills are, and if this is more of a DPS or more of a support character. I think if they ended up being similar to Zhongling, but as a cryo Lancer, that would be really, really strong as a support unit, or support DPS unit, or honestly even main DPS. If you use Crescent Pike or the spear that I was just talking about, this spear would translate really well as a main DPS just because of physical damage bonus. And on a cryo unit, you could easily pair them with an Electro to do Superconduct and get easy extra damage. The other thing about this spear is if the Everfrost Icicle, it doesn't specify if this is cryo damage or not. It just says that it gives bonus damage if enemies are affected by cryo. But if the icicle itself applies cryo, that would be really interesting because it would allow you to also do reactions just by auto attacking. So we'll have to see what that ends up looking like. Next, I'm going to go over Albedo. This is the character art that's been leaked and floating around for a couple days now, but it's confirmed, even though this makes him seem like a Catalyst user and that there was a rumor that he's a bow user, it is confirmed that Albedo is a one-handed sword user, and the sword that I mentioned earlier is actually Albedo's sword. So that makes me think that his E is going to be really strong. We don't actually have any information about what it is or what it does, but this is his character art so far. And this is just talking about the sword, and I believe this talks about how if you have the sword equipped on Albedo, it actually buffs your party and deals additional damage to enemies in Dragonspine. On Zenya's Twitter, he talks a little bit more about what this image actually says, so you guys can check that out in the description below. Next, we're going over Albedo himself. He is a Geo character. There's a little bit of stuff in the game that talks about him as an alchemist, and a lot of the Mondstadt-based characters have voice lines in their story and in their companionship that talk about Albedo, especially Klee and Sucrose. So you'll be able to look at that and get a little bit more about the lore behind his character. But as far as what he actually takes for Ascension and talents, he is a Geo character, so all of the Geo hypostasis materials. And then this is a Cecilio flower, which is the same flower that's shared with Venti that exists in Mondstadt. And then you also have the Divining Scrolls here, which are from the Mage Hilly Trills throughout the world. His level up stat is Geo damage, which I think is really interesting as a sword user. Maybe his kit is very E and Q heavy, which would make this really valuable as opposed to having a physical damage build or something of that sort. And then he's also Books of Ballad, so both him and Rosaria will be the same talent book. So if you want to end up preparing for them before 1.2, then you'll have to keep that in mind when figuring that out. Although we don't know if he's going to be the first one on the banner or really anything about him. It'll probably be Ganyu first, in my opinion, just because doing 2 Geos back to back, since Zhongli is at the end of 1.1, is not ideal. But anyway, yeah, we don't have any information about his talents or constellations. They have not been leaked or translated or anything yet. We'll have to see. Maybe in the next few weeks we'll have a little bit more, and then I'll do a theory crafting session about what I think would be good on Albedo. Next, we're going to talk about Ganyu, and all of the information for her actually has been leaked and come out. So this is the character art for her. This is actually really, really pretty character art. I like the ice cloud flower thing. I don't really know what to call it, but it seems like an ice lotus cloud that she's sort of standing on. And then we don't know anything about the little ethereal fox that's in her orb either, but we've seen her in the story so far, especially in the 1.1 story. There's some cool moments with her, so I hope that they go a little bit more into her backstory, and we get to see a lot of cool stuff out of her. This is just the picture that was being sent to people who are actually in the beta, or taken from people actually in the beta, and this is the character card that's being sent to them in order to test out the character. And then these are her constellations. Sorry, this image is a little blurry. I'll go over it a little bit further on the next page, but just to start off, Constellation 1 is taking damage from Frost Flake Arrow or its AoE damage decreases enemies' cryo resistance by 15% for 6 seconds. A hit regenerates 2 energy for Ganyu. This effect can only occur once per Frost Flake Arrow. So I believe that her charge shot creates a little AoE around whatever target it hits, and even though the arrow hits multiple targets, it can only apply the bonus energy for Ganyu one time. However, it does decrease all enemies hit by its cryo resistance. So the fact that you now have another cryo archer whose charge shot actually is useful is really interesting. And we'll have to see what that actually plays like. But maybe an aim shot build for Ganyu is not a terrible idea if you're going to also run her like support or main DPS or something, since physical damage might not be the best. I don't know, she's a cryo, so maybe physical damage would be good with an electro like Fischl, for example. Next, we're going to talk about Constellation 2, which is Trial of Keating gains 1 additional charge, which I believe is her E. So her E gains 2 charges. Her E is basically Mona's E, but it's cryo version, and it scales off her HP, but it scales in a way that's not as terrible as Amber's scaling. We'll go over that in a little bit. But yeah, basically it allows you to place 2 of her E out at once. Then the following is the same as usual. Constellation 3 is Q up by 3 levels. Constellation 4 is enemies standing within the AoE of her Q take increased damage. This effect strengthens over time. Increased damage taken begins at 5% and increases by 5% every 3 seconds, up to a maximum of 25%. So basically what this means is if you use her Q and an enemy stays in it for the entire duration of the Q, they will be taking an extra 25% damage, which is similar to what Zhongli's Q is going to be doing with the enemies taking extra geo damage, except this is all damage. So I guess it would be closer to Mona's Q. Effectively, this is a really, really strong support aspect of her Q. To my knowledge, it is very similar to Amber's Q. So hopefully the AoE is a little bit bigger than that. But if you are running Cryo and Hydro and you freeze the enemies in this area, that would be really, really strong. I think she'll pair really well with Child, and we'll have to see what that looks like whenever people can play her. But yeah, this seems like it would be really strong. Next is C5, which is E plus 3, which is expected. Some 5-stars have E at Constellation 3, and some of them have it at Constellation 5, but for Ganyu, it's at Con 5. And Constellation 6 is using Trial of Keating causes the next Snowflake Arrow to not require charging. So basically what this translates to is using an E means that your next charge shot is instant. And you have 2 charges of E from the Constellation 2, so that means that an aim shot build, depending on her E's cooldown, might not actually be a terrible idea, especially considering it lowers cryo resistance, and then you could go into her Q, which would buff damage. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that I feel like Ganyu is going to be actually kind of a crazy cryo DPS, especially with the cryo artifact set that boosts damage to enemies affected by ice. And honestly, with her Constellation 4, if you're pairing her with somebody that is using that cryo set as a non-cryo unit, you'd still be able to gain a lot, because with the Constellation 4 and the cryo set bonus, you'd be gaining a total of 55% damage dealt to the cryo target, which is kind of crazy. Yeah. So moving on, we will actually talk about her E and her Q and her Ascension mats and talent books really quick. So we already know that she's a bow user and is cryo element, but what we don't know is that she uses Qingshin flowers, which are the flowers that exist on the tops of peaks in Liyue, and it is I was under the impression that the only character that would use these is Zhao, so I personally haven't been gathering a ton of these, but now I know that I have to get freaking more of them. And then she also uses Nectar, so make sure you're killing your Whopper Flowers if you intend to level Ganyu as soon as possible. Additionally, her level up stat is Cryo Damage, and at level 90, that'll be 38.4%, which is very high, actually. I feel like the scaling is just similar for every character who gets elemental bonus damage, but that seemed, I don't know, whatever. Next, we're going to go over her normals. These percentages are like, I assume they're pretty normal. I don't know really what normal percentages, what normal attack percentages look like, but I'd say the thing that you want to look at probably the most is Frostflake Arrow, which seems, actually reading this like it's an extra part of charged attack. Okay, so basically if you charge aim shot and then you get a Frostflake Arrow, and then Frostflake Arrow has a bloom damage, then that makes me think that you can aim shot someone, which will then put a dot on them, which would then explode. So we'll have to see. Oh, okay, just kidding. It says here at the charge attack section. So perform a more precise aim shot, blah, 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 blah. Okay, charge level 1 fires an icy arrow that deals cryo damage, which I guess is Frostflake Arrow. And then charge level 2 fires off a Frostflake Arrow that deals cryo damage. Oh, okay, so then this is level 2. The Frostflake Arrow blooms after hitting its target, dealing AoE cryo. Okay. So basically what this translates to is there's a step past fully charged aim shot, which would allow it to charge again, which would hit the target for, let's see, a more realistic is probably like level 8 or 7, which would hit the target for this percentage and then would explode shortly after for this percentage. So it basically would make it so that aim shots are doing a total of 300% damage, which is pretty high considering most ultis are, actually this is closer to 400%, but most ultis are about, for 5 stars, they're close to like 700-800% at really high levels. So the fact that this actually scales so high means that if you're going to be using her with the charge up build, then you're going to want to level her normals up really, really high. Next, we're talking about the E, which is Trial of the Keating. Basically, this is a lotus that you place on the ground that taunts enemies, and it's based on Ganyu's max HP, but it scales on her HP in a way that is really good. So if you get it to level 10, which means that you'd max it out, but without getting a crown and all that stuff, or maybe that's level 9, it scales on 200% of her HP, and it's pretty easy just by gearing a character with like plus 20 artifacts to get them to 20k HP. So that means that the flower would have 40k HP, which is kind of crazy. And the fact that you can place 2 of these with her Constellation 2 is even crazier. So you could have 2 40k HP flowers that I assume taunt everything in the game, similar to Mona's E, including Fatui and all that. So yeah, and then when it explodes, it does 224% damage. It only lasts 6 seconds, but has 12-second CD. I think that the cooldowns are short like this because you can stack it twice. But yeah, this seems like a really strong sort of set it and forget it kind of skill, considering you can use it and then switch out and then combo in with the melt or something on a fire damage user, or have the flower ticking and then combo in with hydro to freeze. There's a lot of possibilities. Next is Celestial Shower, which is her Q. Basically, this rains ice shards down for 15 seconds, and then it has a 20-second cooldown, which means that it's really, really high uptime, actually. If it's only has 25% downtime, which means, or 5-second downtime, which is 25% of the cooldown, which means that if you go more energy recharge on her, that you could basically keep this up off cooldown. Since it is 80 energy, you'll probably want to do that anyway, and build her in a similar way to how people build DPS Mona, just because it is such a high energy cost. but the fact that it is so strong as a support and it's going to be dealing AoE cryo, and if you pair it with Hydro, it's going to be consistently freezing everything, those are all crazy aspects. And then lastly, these are Books of Diligence, which I believe also Chongyun uses, and if I remember correctly, this character has a relation to Chongyun. And then this is also the talent upgrade mat from the child boss fight. Really quick, we'll go over her passives, which are refunds 15% of the ores you used when crafting bow weapons. This is kind of whatever if you're a whale, but it's good if you end up getting this character and you're going to do compound bow or something of that sort. It'll save you whenever you're trying to refine. And then for her Ascension 1, if the initial hit of Frostflake Arrow is a critical hit, then the AoE damage afterwards will also be a critical hit. That's actually kind of crazy that they designed something into the game that way, but it means that you can stack crit a decent amount and then maybe like 50-ish% and then go for crit damage. Honestly, it sounds like Skyward Harp on her is going to be really strong, so guess you just need a Skyward Harp for every archer in the game, haha. But anyway, then her next ascension is characters within the radius of Celestial Shower gain a 20% cryo damage bonus. This is also crazy because it means that her Q is essentially meant to be a support skill, with the fact that her C4 makes it do additional damage in general, and then this is 20% cryo damage. That also means that if Ganyu stands within the radius of her Q, and then you use E or you use Charge Shot or Frostflake Arrow or whatever, then that means that will be doing extra damage also. All of this sounds like she's a really strong support DPS character, or if you want to main DPS her, you're going to be leaning more towards charged attacks, which honestly, this is the first bow character that's doing that, unless you consider Amber DPS, but lastly, I just want to go over this picture, which is the Ascension material preview. As far as I'm aware, this is just an indication that whenever you ascend characters, you'll be able to actually get wishes, or potentially they'll include other rewards for different ascension levels. As you can see, this is for level 50 Zhongling, but maybe they will include some Primo Gems on different levels or Mora on different levels. I do really appreciate that they are doing this. However, I hope that they apply it retroactively so that somebody like me who has like 8 level 80 characters can actually just get a bunch of free wishes whenever 1.2 launches. Yeah, we'll see what that ends up looking like, but I like the direction that this is going, and I hope that they continue to include or reward players for diversifying their characters and weapons and stuff like that. So yeah, that's basically it. I'm gonna now go over just really quick, give a shout out to AE Entropy. This is the person that I found who had all the leaks and pictures and stuff. If you want to give them a follow, go ahead. And then some of the other stuff I found translated was from Zeniet, and they are a well-known leaker in the community, or a well-known person who posts about leaks. They had a few pictures and talked a little bit about the 1.2 event and stuff, if you guys want to check that out for Albedo Sword and all that. That pretty much concludes it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I know this was kind of a long one. I kind of rambled in the theory crafting section for Ganyu, but I'm kind of excited about her, so we will see what that looks like. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Have a good day. Peace.